everyone. Thanks for joining another episode of the PM Learning Series. My name is Shavi. I am a product manager at LinkedIn as well as host for today's show. Please drop in the chat where you're joining us from, and we have some very exciting topic today regarding responsible AI. So some housekeeping. The Product Management Learning Series is a series of live streaming events where industry thought leaders and product practitioners share about their product building journey and career tips to aspiring and current product builders like you to level up your product career as well as inspire you to build better products. Please make sure you subscribe to our newsletter in the events details page to receive recaps of key takeaways from today's events, as well as future event updates. We have lined up all the way till the summer with very exciting product leaders for most Fridays. So make sure you subscribe and don't miss out. Again, introduce yourself, where you're joining us from in the chat, and can't wait to say hi to many of you. And today with me, I have a very special guest. Let me bring her to the stream. Navrina, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Shavi.
Navrina is the founder and CEO of Credo AI, a government SaaS platform empowering enterprise to deliver responsible AI. And we'll talk a lot about what that is, why that is so important. As a technology leader with over 18 plus years of experience in enterprise SaaS, AI, and mobile, Navrina has helped multiple products and business leadership roles at Microsoft and Qualcomm. Navrina is also the member of a very important organization, the U.S. Department of Commerce National Artificial Intelligence Advisory Committee, which advised the president and the National AI Initiative Office. Wow, what an important role. We have a lot to learn from you, Navrina. Navrina is also the executive board member of Mozilla, guiding their trustworthy AI chapter. And Navrina is a young global leader with the World Economic Forum, and was on their Future Council for AI, guiding principles and regulations in responsible AI. Navrina, I think with the prevalence of ChatGPT, getting more and more people are using it, I think we start to gain more and more awareness of the importance of responsible AI. So this is a very important conversation that I think we will have. So thank you again for joining us today. And before we start, I just want to say hi. Say hi to a couple of folks from the stream. We have folks from South Africa, Chicago, California, Kansas City, Poland, India, Toronto, Canada, Portugal, New York, Cupertino, Italy. Thank you so much for joining us. Please continue to drop in the chat, say hi to Navrina. If you have any question regarding responsible AI, please also drop them in the chat. Now, without further ado, can we maybe walk through your memory lane, travel back? How did you get started in product management, and tell us a little bit more about your experience working in AI and enterprise SaaS?
Absolutely, Shavi. So first and foremost, thank you so much for having me, and really excited to see the global presence here of product managers. My journey in engineering started way back when I was in India. And for me, it was always an interesting tool to figure out how I can, use capabilities in engineering to solve problems that I saw in the community and in the world. I grew up in India, and I moved to United States to do my master's, and right out of school joined Qualcomm. For any of you who have a cell phone, you certainly have some of the chips from that amazing company. And I would say that was a very formidable experience, because I started out in the research and development team, really focused on bringing to life our vision of how do you connect this world? How do you connect individuals, whether you're coming from Germany or India or UK or wherever in the world? And I would say that my engineering upbringing was really exciting at Qualcomm, because it gave me all the capabilities and the tools and the skills to really understand systems at the fundamental level. How do you build complicated, complex engineering systems at scale? However, one of the things that I was always drawn towards was, why are we building the things that we are building? And that I would say that why was what led me to product management. After having spent about a decade building, engineering products at scale, I moved on to product management at Qualcomm to really focus on some of the new areas that Qualcomm was looking to move into, whether it was healthcare, whether it was robotics. So the inspiration really came from, how can I ensure that I understand the why behind why what we are building and for whom we are building. So that started my career, about, oh my God, long time back in product management, and started to really get excited about some of the emerging technologies, from augmented reality to robotics, and now to machine learning and AI.
Yeah, it's a really inspiring story. I love the two most important question that you asked actually in product management is why behind what you're building, and then for whom that you're building. So I think those are fundamentally the most important questions. um, I wanted to understand a little bit about your journey starting Credo AI and the mission that the company is embarked to achieve. Like you said, you always ask the question of why and who you're serving. But maybe before we get there and hearing that story, if you could just level set with the audience, like what is responsible AI and why is this so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So, responsible AI is an emerging field, even though I've been in it now for 7 years since its beginning. It feels old to me, but it is still an emerging field. And it really means bringing continuous oversight and accountability to the design, development, and use of artificial intelligence systems. As you can imagine, in the past decade or so, artificial intelligence has progressed quite drastically from traditional machine learning systems to now generative AI systems. And when you think about holistically the transformational power of artificial intelligence, there's a lot of nuance to what is the impact that you want to get from these systems, to the initial intent of actually even using machine learning or AI. And so responsible AI is a mechanism by which you can holistically look at the entire AI lifecycle and make sure that you're injecting the right ethos, the right set of values, you're bringing in the right set of regulation frameworks, right set of standards, to make sure that at every step of AI development and design, you're doing that with responsibility and accountability in mind. And so the way to operationalize responsible AI is through governance. And that is what we are focused at Credo. At Credo, our mission is really to ensure that companies and organizations across the world that are either building, buying, or using artificial intelligence do so in a responsible way. And responsibility for us is really focused on making sure your AI is safe, it is fair, it is secure, it is compliant, it is auditable, and more importantly, it's human centered.
That's so important. All the keywords that you mentioned, right? Like all the way throughout the entire product development process, because I tend to learn, like in many ways, AI is training on data that could be inherently biased, right? If you are not being intentional about what's being trained on, the training process and the output, then there's a lot of things that could happen and make it a little less responsible. So I think Credo AI is definitely embarking on a very, very important mission. I wanted to understand a little bit more about, you mentioned kind of like what is responsible AI. If you can give us a little bit more about the current state of where you think the industry or various companies and technologies understands and embrace responsible AI, and how do you see it impacting different industries and sectors? How should product managers or product builders, like many of us, gaining more awareness about the importance of responsible AI? Let's start with that.
Yeah, Shivi. So lots to unpack there. And I would say that the best way to explain where the future is, it might be useful to go back into the past. So, about 7 years ago, I was recruited by Microsoft to lead commercialization of their cognitive services. These were a set of services. You can imagine everything from facial recognition to large language models to NLP system to speech recognition systems. And one of the areas that I got really excited about was the low code, no code conversational AI systems. And in these conversational AI systems, what was really interesting was you're really abstracting the complexity, the technology, the machine learning, complexity that comes with it from the end user. So how do you make something so easy to use by someone who does not understand or is not trained in technology? And that vision in itself was super powerful. But as you think about that vision, you also start to think about the unintended consequences. If I, as a user, do not know what is being served to me, is it factually correct? What is it trained on? Is it fair or is it not fair? There comes a point where the risks actually outweigh the benefits that the technology is meant to serve. So I would say a couple of years ago, I really started to see this manifestation of AI safety concerns at scales in these conversational AI systems. And what was interesting was it really stemmed from three core fundamental issues, if you will. So the first issue was, the what I call the oversight deficit. And I'm sure all the product managers here are going to appreciate that. When we are building machine learning based systems, obviously you have multiple stakeholders involved, and product managers are so good at sort of bringing all those different stakeholders, their viewpoints to the table, but always keeping in mind the voice of the customer. I would say that in case of machine learning systems, that drastically shifts because now the set of stakeholders you need to understand and bring into this building process actually drastically changes. You have to think about risk, you have to think about compliance, you have to think about policy, you have to also think about the impacted communities and impacted users who may or may not have understanding of machine learning. So, what was very fascinating for me 7 years ago was how there was an oversight deficit that was getting created among the stakeholders who understand and are building technology, like machine learning engineers, product managers, data scientists, and the non technical stakeholders, but who understood the business risk. So, think about compliance and risk functions. So, the key question was how do we bridge that gap? That was one core thing. The second core insight for me was how every time you talk about governance, you talk about structures and guardrails, there's always this, a step back moment where governance is a hindrance to speed. And if anything, those who've worked in high tech know how critical speed is to development of AI systems. And so for me, that was like this another aha moment that, governance is seen as a hindrance to innovation rather than enabling innovation. And how do I change that perspective? And then lastly, again, going back to the issues that machine learning systems are actually causing in this world, it's no longer just a technical issue. Oh my God, the accuracy is not up to the mark. It is actually a techno-social issue. There are fairness challenges which are leaving demographics out of the economy being created by AI. There's massive adversarial implications to machine learning systems when you think about deepfake technology. So when you bring in all these three factors, the oversight deficit, governance being seen as hindrance, and that no longer with machine learning, it's a technical problem, it's a techno-social problem, it becomes really critical now as product managers to start thinking about how do you upskill to sort of play in this new ecosystem. So that brings me to the now state, and then we can discuss the future state. So the now state is I truly believe that product managers are becoming even more critical in this AI ecosystem because one, we already have the skills, the communication style, the ability to bring in diverse perspectives, the ability to ask the right questions around why we are doing it, and more importantly, how you're going to do it and how you're going to activate the entire system to build something that meets the needs of the users. But now it is really critical for product managers to start thinking about how should I think about regulations that are coming in artificial intelligence? How should I think about potential impacts to demographics that I might not have thought about previously building my products? How should I think about engagement with the business stakeholders around what is top of mind for them? How should I think about engagement with my risk professionals so that I understand the business regulatory brand risk that is top of mind for my company? So I would say there's a big focus there, and then we can go into where is responsible AI governance really heading, especially with generative AI in mind.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's just so much to unpack there. There's like a lot of golden nuggets, right? I love the three things you mentioned about oversight, deficits, and like the yes, I definitely have been in like in the past. We think about lawyers and governance is more like an adherence than like an enabler for us to going into certain direction. And then yes, the techno-social considerations. Yesterday I was reading this book. AI 2041 by Kai-Fu Lee. It's been out for maybe a little over a year. And one of the chapters talk about deep fakes in depth about the potential implications. So I definitely resonated to a lot of the stuff that you mentioned. And then the implication on what role that product manager could potentially play to bring that more awareness, the skill, helping to consider the unintended consequences potentially for users that might previously not needed to consider. Before we get to the future state, I want to double click on this particular part on the responsibility of PM. I think a lot of what we touch upon are concepts that are important, but two things. One, a lot of it is hindering upon like implicit bias or unconscious bias as well. So what are some concrete tips that you think product manager can take to sort of very drastically increase their level of awareness for this kind of and asking the right question at the right time, right? Building that mindset to do so. Is it a matter of getting educated, listening to more podcasts like this or reading more books? Or is there some other habits that you think product builders can have to start just, having more awareness, asking the right question, asking more question in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. As a product manager, I think one of the core skills everyone needs to have is the ability to continuously learn as well as continuously unlearn. And that becomes even more critical in artificial intelligence. The pace of advancements in AI, and if you've been watching the space just in the past 6 months, it is super critical for product managers to be keeping pace with learning and understanding what truly is AI and what it is not. There's already conflation of terms between the traditional machine learning versus generative AI. And the best way to learn it is diving deeper into, state of the art papers that are coming out in talking about some of these new AI advancements. So in terms of what can you do today, I would say the first step is really learning and being aware of what's happening in the world, reading, going to the source of truth and reading multiple papers on, evolving AI technology. But secondly, it is also a lot about unlearning. And what I mean by unlearning is, first and foremost, the traditional ways we build products now drastically have changed for machine learning. As I was mentioning, it is not just about one or two stakeholders coming from your engineering team or from your business. It literally has expanded in terms of the stakeholders you have to bring into understanding as a product manager what you should be focused on and why and how you're going to deliver against that. And then, secondly, I would say it's really going back to fairness being an important critical component of responsibility and responsible AI, really understanding the sources of where this bias can emerge. By its very nature, machine learning is supposed to be biased because it's recognizing patterns in data, or in case of generative AI, it's basically generating new kinds of data, whether it's image, voice, etc. So, machine learning by itself is supposed to be biased, but the question is, how do you ensure that there are no unintended consequences for different demographics? And this is where I can't emphasize how critical it is to learn from the field. And what I mean by that is engaging yourself with the consumers, with the customers, and really paying attention to understanding how they're getting impacted, when they're getting impacted, how often are they getting impacted. So, bringing it all together, what can product managers on this call, on this podcast do? First is being very, very up to date on your learning methodologies. And then, whether it is reading papers, whether it's following the right thought leaders online, or whether it is really, I would say, trying to get learning through action within your enterprises. And then the second is being able to unlearn some of the old product management behaviors and skills, which actually don't serve in this new AI powered world, is really critical.
Yeah, I love both the aspect of learning and unlearning, because unlearning is just as important in this era to be learning. We have a couple of folks asking similar question about, hey, are there like recommendations of books or papers, like where to find them? Like, do you have your favorite?
Oh, I'm always constantly learning. I don't have a set of favorites, but I'm happy to, after this podcast, Shivi, send you a list of what I would recommend for this group, and you're, welcome to share that in your follow up.
That's awesome. So, for folks who wanted to learn more, make sure you go to the events details page. There's a link to subscribe to a newsletter. So, every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, we'll send out a newsletter, recap key takeaways from today's events, as well as a list of resources that we'll hear from Navrina. And I think AI is so important. So, make sure you stay up to date on your knowledge and consuming from the best. So, thanks for offering to share as well. Um, let's thank you so much. That tips for product manager, I think it's very on point, very practical, things that we can learn and get exercise on. I wanted to talk about, switching gear, to talk about, like you said, the future, or the challenges and opportunities that we've seen in implementing responsible AI, especially in the enterprise environment. And I know that over the past 3 years, you've been working, Credo AI has probably helped many organizations to try to, adopt and implement responsible AI. So if you have any examples, case study, whether it's successful or not so successful, that you could share with the community, some of the challenges and opportunities that you see in this space.
Absolutely. So when it comes to responsible AI, it's actually not a new space, because if you think about building accountability into your basic software systems, it's basically extending that to artificial intelligence. What is different, though, is the scale and the speed of the advancements in artificial intelligence, which is increasing the risk exposure of organizations. So, in terms of challenges that enterprises are facing, I would say first and foremost, really understanding what does good look like in this space. Right now, there are no standards or benchmarks against which companies can say, hey, my fraud application based on machine learning systems is fair because there's this benchmark and I've tested against that. Or my facial recognition application is doing really well because I've looked at this particular benchmark. So that's the issue right now, is there is lack of standards and there's lack of measurements around what does good look like in this ecosystem. Having said that, there is an emergence of plethora of frameworks as well as regulations and standards. So for example, if you go to the OECD website, now OECD website is a great resource, and Shivi, I'll add that to the follow up, which has a list of over 1,000 responsible AI frameworks globally being either proposed or being adopted by different countries. And I think that's a great resource to really start thinking about what are the core values that the countries globally are thinking about as they are enabling innovation within their ecosystems. The second thing, which is really critical, is really thinking about, how do the emerging regulations play a role? Again, there are many emerging regulations in artificial intelligence. For example, EU AI Act is being currently debated. Most likely is going to get passed this year and come into enforcement in 2025. And the basic premise of EU AI Act is, I would say, really thinking about the risk profile of artificial intelligence systems and using risk categorization of AI to really come up with a mechanism for conformity assessments, as well as a way to put guardrails around those systems. And for those who are aware of GDPR like compliance, which was really focused on data privacy at a global level, EU AI Act is going to have a similar Brussels effect, 10x the amount of impact. But EU AI Act is just one such regulation. In United States itself, we are extensively thinking about local and state regulations. So, for example, in New York City, there is a law that has already been put in place. It's called the New York City Law number 144, which is really focused on, if you are an enterprise that is either building or buying third party AI employment systems, in that case, you have to provide a fairness audit on your websites by April 16th, which is coming up very soon. And then, as you can imagine, in different industry sectors like insurance, there's a Colorado law which is focused on impact assessments, how these AI systems are going to be impacting certain communities across different tenets like fairness or robustness, etc. So I think one of the biggest challenges enterprises are facing right now is one, they don't know what good looks like. Two, there's an emergence of local, state, federal regulations across the globe. So how do you keep pace with all these changing regulations? And this is where Credo AI really comes in place as well. And then the third challenge that these enterprises are facing, and I'm sure many of the product managers are jostling that day in, day out, is many of the AI organizations have different siloed implementation of their MLOps pipelines. So, they can have data robot, they can have SageMaker, they can have just, traditional ML flow. But as you can imagine, when you have all these very siloed technical infrastructure for building and deploying machine learning systems at scale, how do you infuse accountability and oversight across all of them? And as you can imagine, that is a growing pain point across enterprises. And then lastly, I would say that there is a lack of compliant data, especially for testing, not for training, for testing and auditing. So once you've launched these systems out in the market, is there a way that you can do independent test and independent auditing to really see that what an enterprise is putting out as what their good looks like for these AI systems, that their systems are actually doing that out in the market? So concretely, give you an example. If you think about facial recognition systems, which have been highly debated in the past, I would say 3 to 4 years, one of the backlashes and great work done by Dr. Bulyamani from MIT and part of the Algorithmic Justice League was really finding out that some of these systems actually don't do very well on different demographics, different ethnicities, and they actually don't do well on women of color especially. So if you are are trying to get into a building which has access control cameras, there was a lot of work in the past couple of years around how these systems are going to do on these different ethnic and gender profiles. And as you can imagine, if you are launching a transformational technology which is based on machine learning at scale in the market with the impact it could have, I think there's a step back moment or a reflective moment you need to have around, is this going to work for everyone equally so that the purpose that the tool was being used for actually serves as consumers? And I would say that that's a bigger question that product managers should start be asking, is where is the data coming from? Do we have governance structures in place? How siloed implementation of technology exists? And how can I keep pace with emerging regulations and standards?
I love that. I think those are very, very important to question to ask, and we should, all gain awareness of asking that to uncover some of those unconscious bias again, in the training data as well as, compliance data for auditing. And for folks who wanted to, subscribe to the newsletter, again, I'm pasting the link here so that you can make sure you subscribe and receive a recap of takeaways from this conversation and additional resources that Navrina will share. We are almost at 10. Time's always fly by. But Navrina, I wanted to ask you one question, maybe slightly tangential to responsible AI. But, obviously, as we hear you talking about all the various areas of responsible AI in your story, you have a very successful career, right? Not only founding your own company, but also being a very active participants and influencers and leaders in a lot of this important conversations that's yet to come and become a mainstream. So you're helping to shape some of our future in many ways, and being a member, advising the presidents and a lot of the AI and nationwide AI initiatives. I wanted to ask, what advice would you give to the younger generation of people who have maybe similar aspiration as you, in their way of thinking, creating their impact, and wanted to be the forefront of shaping some of that conversation?
That's a great question, Shivi. I would say that bias towards intentional action is something that I would highly recommend for everybody. And what I mean by intentional action, if you are standing at the bottom of a hill and saying, oh my God, someday I will get there, you're not going to get there unless you take that first step. So it's really critical that rather than waiting to be strong and waiting to be great to start on that journey, start today, take that first step so that you can actually get to greatness. So this is one of my favorite quotes of all time is, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. And then I would say that right now, especially with the world that we are living in, with massive macroeconomics at play, it's really critical, and especially for product managers, to start taking that intentional action, bringing that intentional velocity to making change happen. So hopefully that serves everybody.
Yes, that's a great advice. We are coming up at time at the around the clock. So usually we ask a round of lightning questions to every guest on our show. You can answer in 60 seconds or less. Do you have any burning question? Are you ready for us to start?
Sorry, Shivi, was that a question for me?
Yeah, let's get started. Lightning round question. So first, what is your
Okay.
favorite product and why?
I'm always cautious about answering that because I do enjoy testing out a lot of different products. I would say currently I'm intrigued by GPT-4. And the reason I'm intrigued by GPT-4 from OpenAI is one, because of the massive implications and impact that's already having among stakeholders who don't even understand technology. It's the ease of use of that technology. And the reason that I'm cautious about it is because there's so many unintended consequences that we're already seeing with GPT-4, everything from hallucinations to privacy leakage to really fairness challenges to toxicity. So as you can imagine, it's a very interesting moment, especially in generative AI that we are living through, where the ease of use has to be balanced with the risk exposures that we are giving ourselves. So yeah, I would say that's the one that I'm most intrigued by right now.
Yeah, that's a good one. One last question. Who is your product role model, or who has been most influential in your product career?
Yeah, I would say, again, it might be a non-answer, but I am just intrigued by humans. So I believe in always paying attention to customers and what their needs are, but at the same time being able to understand when to adapt versus when to persist. So, as a very curious person, I'm constantly learning in every human engagement that I have, and constantly seeing what their needs are and how they're approaching those needs. I think as a product manager, and many might agree on this podcast today, is that being curious about the world around you and giving yourself the permission to be surprised is the best gift you can give yourself. So my role model is literally the end consumer and humans who are using this technology.
I love that. I think humanity is the best, the best role model. I thank you so much, Navrina. It's been a really, really great session. I think we're hearing some shout out from the community, really loving this session. And so thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to reading your list of recommendations after the show. And folks, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter to receive them. But thank you again, Navrina, for your time. And this has been a really important topic. I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes. So it will be a really great recap for many of the key learnings and takeaway. And thanks again for your time. So
Thank you
many
so much
loves
for
from the
having me.
community. All right. Have a great
Thank
rest
you.
of your day. Happy Friday.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.